What is the price of desire? How far would you go to taste forbidden pleasures, to push the boundaries of sensation, to escape the ordinary? Hellraiser isn't just a horror film. It's an intricate, nightmarish meditation on human longing, pain, and the consequences of seeking more than we were ever meant to have. Beneath its grotesque imagery lies something deeper, a story of Faustian bargains, sadomasochism, addiction, abusive families, and the unspoken fears of the AIDS crisis that loomed over the 1980s. Welcome to Phantom Astronaut, where we explore the eerie, the unusual, and the profound. If you enjoy peeling back the layers of horror and diving into the unsettling, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's open the puzzle box and examine the many dark facets of Hellraiser. At its core, Hellraiser is a modern-day Faustian tale. The legend of Faust tells of a man who makes a deal with the devil, trading his soul for unlimited knowledge, pleasure, or power. The lament configuration, the ornate puzzle box at the heart of the Hellraiser mythos, is a direct parallel. Those who seek it out, like Frank Cotton, believe they are unlocking untold pleasures. But, like all Faustian bargains, there's a catch. The Cenobites, grotesque beings who transcend the lines between angels and demons, do not distinguish between pleasure and pain. To them, suffering is not a punishment. It is a gift. In the world of Hellraiser, desire leads only to damnation, and those who seek excess are consumed by it. This leads directly into the film's unmistakable connection to sadomasochism. Clive Barker, the film's creator and an openly gay artist, was no stranger to the BDSM subculture. The Cenobites, clad in leather, metal piercings, and open wounds, are a reflection of that world, but distorted into something far darker. The film challenges mainstream notions of pain and pleasure, blurring the line between the two. The Cenobites do not simply torture their victims, they initiate them. Their world is not about punishment, but transformation. Pain, in their philosophy, is the ultimate expression of sensation, and sensation is what their victims seek, knowingly or not. Frank's fate is sealed not because he was tricked, but because he was willing to go further than anyone else to chase something beyond human experience. But Hellraiser is more than just a meditation on masochistic desire. It's also a harrowing metaphor for addiction. Frank, skinless and desperate, is a perfect image of a man consumed by his own hunger, unable to stop even as he destroys himself and everyone around him. Addiction, whether to drugs, power, or sensation, erodes humanity, turning people into hollowed-out versions of themselves. Frank's need for human sacrifice to regenerate his body mirrors the desperation of an addict who will manipulate, steal, or destroy anything in pursuit of their next high. Julia, his former lover and accomplice, becomes his enabler, luring men to their deaths in a twisted act of devotion. In many ways, Julia represents the codependent partner, someone who is willing to sacrifice others just to keep the addict and the fantasy alive. But addiction is never truly satisfied. Frank always needs more bodies, more suffering, more sensation. And in the end, his appetite is his undoing. This theme of destruction extends beyond addiction and into something even more personal. Hellraiser is, at its heart, a story about abusive families. Kirsty Cotton, our protagonist, isn't just fighting against the Cenobites. She's fighting against the family that betrayed her. Frank is the ultimate abuser, selfish and predatory. But Julia is complicit in his evil. She sacrifices innocent men, cheats on her husband, and ultimately chooses the monster over the family that she swore to love. Kirsty, meanwhile, is left to pick up the pieces, navigating a house filled with hidden horrors and unspoken traumas. This dynamic is painfully familiar to those who have lived through toxic family structures. The fear of discovering that the people who should protect you are actually the ones hurting you is a nightmare all on its own. And yet, the horror of Hellraiser isn't just personal, it's societal. When the film was released in 1987, the world was in the grip of the AIDS crisis. A new disease was ravaging communities, particularly within the LGBTQ+ world, and the response from governments and media was silence, fear, and stigma. Hellraiser does not explicitly reference AIDS, but its imagery is undeniably tied to the anxieties of the time. The film is saturated with the idea of forbidden pleasure leading to bodily decay. Frank, once charismatic and powerful, is reduced to a decaying husk, dependent on the blood of others to sustain himself. The Cenobites, with their mutilated flesh and disregard for traditional notions of beauty or health, evoke the very real fears of disease, death, and the idea that those who sought pleasure were being punished for it. This unspoken parallel between the film and the cultural fears of its time makes Hellraiser even more haunting. It's not just a horror film. It's a reflection of an era defined by paranoia, loss, and suffering. The 1980s saw the rise of conservative moral panic, with politicians and media figures pushing the idea that those who engaged in unconventional sexuality or hedonism were bringing about their own destruction. Hellraiser turns this societal judgment into something literal, making it all the more disturbing. Through its themes of Faustian bargains, sadomasochistic pleasure, addiction, family trauma, and societal fears, Hellraiser endures as one of the most complex horror films ever made. It doesn't just shock, it forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about our desires, our fears, and the cost of wanting more than we were ever meant to have. Thank you for opening the puzzle box with me. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Phantom Astronaut. Check the description below for more ways to support the channel. What do you think? Does Hellraiser still hold the same power today, or has its meaning evolved with time? I'm Phantom Astronaut. I'll see you out there.